The Swivl. Good morning. So listen, page 20 and 20A, B, C, D, and E are going to be reading, and there's a little chart to fill out. That's going to be due, I'd like to be due on Monday. I'm not sure if our marchers, I think I gave them marching orders for that, to have that read and filled out by Monday. This is something that we would probably do tonight and talk about it tomorrow, but I kind of want to save it for when they get back. Okay, so it might be Tuesday before we get to it. In our discussion so far, we've been talking about different forms of government based on different criteria, and yesterday we went into the economic systems, right? We did mercantilism, socialism, communism, bureaucracy, and we got to finish up with capitalism today, okay? And then we're going to look at some concepts of democracy that are important to our way of life and our system, okay? But let's get back to capitalism. And capitalism, guys, is one of those terms that a lot of American students are not really taught about. It's not like a focus for any of our classes. Now, I guess that falls on social studies or falls on an economics class, but it's not. Economics is not mandatory, is it? Any of you guys take economics? Are you in it now, or okay? How's that going?
Good, I like it.
Yeah. Wait till track season. You'll play it more than that. But anyhow, have you talked about capitalism yet? Okay.
Like very basic stuff right now.
Okay. Well, capitalism isn't too complicated, but I have a definition for you. Okay, it's not as bad as the others. Certainly not bureaucratic in nature. Come on, give me some love. All right. As opposed to mercantilism, where they say there's a finite amount of wealth, in capitalism, there's an infinite amount of wealth in the world. Okay? That's optimistic, isn't it? An infinite amount of wealth in the world. Now, does anybody know who is kind of the original author of Capitalism? Let me give you a hint. He wrote a book called The Wealth of Nations.
Is it president?
No, never president. It's a very common type of name, huh? Yeah, where is Jeffrey? He's on a bus somewhere.
Is he on home?
No, it's not Tom Paine. It's actually Adam Smith. Have you heard that name before? Adam Smith? You learned that your sophomore year, I'm pretty sure. If you had swords, for sure. Okay. Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations. Now, he didn't actually coin the term capitalism, but the term capitalism is based off of Adam Smith's theories on economics. Okay. And you've heard of laissez-faire? Okay. And what Adam Smith talked about was the invisible hand of government. That when you have a free market, a marketplace, where consumers decide what is demanded, what we want, right? And producers supply it for them. And that creates wealth. Okay, so let me go over to the cows. Is it not following me? Come on. Over here, Swivl. Over here. Come on. Okay. We have two cows. Where are we, capitalism? Down here, okay? You sell one and buy a bull. Okay, well, it could be entertaining. So you get rid of one of your cows, you buy a bull, what happens? They mate, right? Now, do you want to use the same bull with the offspring from the first one? No. So what you can do is you're going to swap out your bull with another guy that has a bull. Okay? And pretty soon you're going to have some cattle. Right? Now, what are you going to do with these cattle? You're going to milk them?
It depends on the cows.
Right. But the ones that you can milk, you're going to milk the heifers, right?
Yep.
And what are you going to do with the milk?
Sell some.
Well, what you don't drink, you could sell, right? Okay. Now, if you have enough cattle and you have too many cows to milk, you can hire somebody to milk the cows for you. What have you just created? A job. Now, obviously you have so much milk, you need to sell it, and you need somebody to deliver it. So you get a truck driver to deliver your milk. Now, back when I was growing up, guys, they had milkmen. They would actually, we had this box on our front doorstep. It was a metal box, lid, and every week the milkman would deliver milk in your front box. Okay, just like the mail.
What do you pay for it?
You just set up an account, and they send you a bill, and you pay. Okay? They don't do that much anymore. There's still some people that come around and sell meat, like Schwamms and so forth, and that sort of thing, but the milkman's kind of gone by the wayside. But we're kind of returning that to, now we've got this deal where at some of our stores you can order online and they'll deliver it, or you can just pick it up, it's ready. That's pretty cool. So times are changing again. But guys, what you've done is you've created a truck driver, and he's gonna go around and pick up milk from other farmers as well, and he's going to distribute it. Okay, and once you get enough cattle, you might start butchering some of the cattle, right? And selling the meat. So you hire somebody to butcher the meat, okay, and then you sell the meat. So now you have a butcher, okay, and you're supplying the grocer, right? And so what's happening here is if the milkman, the butcher, the truck driver, if they save enough money, then they can kind of start their own thing. So maybe the truck driver buys a couple more trucks and hire other people to drive for him. And he starts a trucking business. And he's creating wealth, okay? And then the guy that milks your cow saves his money, and he starts buying some chickens. And so he starts a chicken farm. Okay, and this is how capitalism works. Okay, it creates wealth, and you can kind of see the infinite part of this. Okay, and this is how our economy works. Now, anytime the invisible hand becomes very strong of government, and what do I mean by it? What is the hand doing? Regulating, controlling. Okay, that is going to minimize efficiency. Okay, and this is what you're seeing in the first days of Trump's administration, is he's rolling back regulations. Put a freeze on federal hiring. Okay, he's trying to limit bureaucracy, red tape, regulation. That makes American businesses more efficient, which means they can make more money. If they can make more money, maybe more American businesses would stay in America. I mean, that's the whole idea behind it. If you regulate, okay, and some of these regulations, if you're reading the news, you can see some of these regulations that they're doing away with, which are kind of silly. Okay, and are they cost a lot, and they take man hours, and anytime you're using man hours for paperwork or something like that, it's not efficient. Okay. We could look up a list. You got your phone? Okay, do a Google. Look up Trump executive orders on regulations.
How about,
okay.
What are your thoughts on the pipeline?
The Keystone Pipeline and the other pipeline. Now, you guys realize we have hundreds of thousands, or we have, it might be hundreds of thousands of pipelines running in this country already. So what's the big deal about building a new pipeline? Especially the Keystone one. Now, I understand the concern about the other one because it kind of travels close to some underground water sources. Okay, so I get the concern there. And occasionally pipelines do, leak or break or something like that. But guys, they're all over the country. I mean, you can Google a map, if you get out your phone, of pipelines in this country, and they're all over the place. Okay, that's one of the biggest investments that Koch Industry has, is in pipelines. Okay, moving oil from one place to another, moving fuel from one place to another. It's quite common.
Why are they doing a bit about it?
Huh?
What's different?
Well, the reason why John Kerry, Secretary of State, and President Obama said they didn't want the Keystone Pipeline is that they said they wanted to be a leader in the world on clean energy, okay, and on climate change. And what message would we be sending to the rest of the world if we continue to build pipelines for fossil fuels? Yeah, it's quite extraordinary, isn't it? I'm going to show this to the class. Okay, these are pipelines all over the United States. Okay? Thank you for sharing that, finding that. Okay, so we're going to build a new pipeline. Oh no, we're going to build a new pipeline. What's going to go wrong? You know what I mean? It's a little bit silly that people throw a fit about this kind of thing. When, you know, what did you find anything, Tristan? Non-regulation. Okay. I can't Google on my phone. It's being used there. Just look up regulations reversed by Trump. Maybe that. Google that. A lot of these will be like EPA regulations. I know they froze some of those. Did you guys hear about the immigration deal with, I think there were 7 Muslim countries that they're going to, I don't know if they're halting immigration yet, but like Iran, Iraq, Syria. Now, left off that list, you know, the one that bothers me is Saudi Arabia. They're an ally, and so to cut off immigration from there, whether it be temporarily or, you know, all of these are temporary, you know, would be kind of a political hot potato with Saudi Arabia. But if you go back to 9/11, you know, 17 of the 19 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. Well, that's a long story. I could tell it, but it's kind of really complicated. Huh? Well, Saudi Arabia is, first of all, they have a lot of oil. Okay? Probably, yes. What? Well, the fracking situation, like in Oklahoma, I mean, that's starting to cause some concern with earthquakes and so forth. No, we're not. I mean, Texas, North Dakota, Kansas. I mean, I drove to El Dorado, Emporia, Saturday. You see all the, and I think most of that's natural gas, isn't it? Anyone?
I think so.
Huh?
I think so.
Yeah.
Like the leading natural gas
Yeah.
state.
Okay, so supply and demand are kind of the rule of the game of capitalism, okay? And competition is seen as good, okay? You want competition. Competition improves the products, it improves efficiency, and for the consumer, oftentimes lowers prices. Yes? Okay? Now, this term capitalism, okay, so Bernie Sanders got a lot of traction this last year, right? Especially with young people. Okay, and for me, somebody that studied history and this sort of thing, that's very scary. And the term capitalism is not really understood by our people, and so it's easy to demonize something. Okay, and what it's really easy to demonize is wealthy people and rich people and people that have way more money than they need. Right? That's easy to demonize. It's easy to create an us versus them, that they're not paying their fair share. Now, if you look at taxes, guys, the top 1%, the top 5%, the top 10% pay the vast amount of taxes in this country. The vast majority, like 85%, the top 10% of all the revenue from income tax comes from the top 10%. The other 15% comes from that group, because 48% of Americans don't pay income tax. So from the 52% that do, you subtract 10%, you're at 42%. They pay about 15% of the income taxes in this country. So you still may not feel that they're paying their fair share, which is fine. You can have that opinion, that they need to pay more. Okay? But to feel like, like you're going to take, 60, 70, 80% of those super rich's income and tax them at that rate, I'm not sure that's good for our economy. Okay? So you've got to have a balance. All right? And so capitalism, guys, and I will tell you this, and this is not a lie, this is straight truth. Capitalism has brought more people out of poverty than any economic system in the history of the world. Guys, look at this country. Look at the fruits that we have. I mean, how wonderful this country is and what you can achieve in this country. Guys, that is because of capitalism, not because of socialism, guys. Not because of communism. Not because of bureaucracy, which is inefficient and bloated and wasteful. It's because of capitalism. Do we need the hand of government involved? Do we need some regulation? Absolutely. And we studied the stock market, right? The stock market crashed in 1929. You've got to have somebody watching over to make sure that people aren't breaking the law. And when they do break the law, they need to go to jail. And you've heard of Bernie Madoff, and you heard of this guy? I don't know if you ever heard of Enron. Enron was like the fifth largest company in the entire world. And their CEO cooked the books. He faked the numbers to show that they had more money, they had more cash flow, and they were in much better financial shape. They were lying, they were in trouble, and the whole company went down. The fifth largest company in the world. This was, Kenneth Lay was the CEO. This is about 15 years ago. And people that worked for that company, not only did they lose their jobs, but one of the benefits that they had for working for that company was getting the company stock at a cheaper rate. So the people that worked for the company could buy the stock. Okay, and so a lot of people put their life savings in that, but the stock wasn't worth near what it was really priced at. And so they had a rule that they couldn't sell their stock for 5 years after they bought it. So they were stuck with this stock as the company just collapsed and their stock became worth nothing. And all these people that worked for this company lost everything. Their job, their investments. Ken Lay went to jail. Okay? And died in jail. Okay? Bernie Madoff's in jail. Bilking people. There's this guy that used to coach this guy's son, and he's in jail right now. He swindled people out of money. He was like a broker. And he said, hey, invest with me, I'm going to double your money. So he would do printouts of how much money they were making. It's very easy to fake a printout. Okay? And show them how much money they were making. But what he was doing with that money they were investing, he was living this lavish life. It was all a lie.
He said he was like building a bunch of stuff in India.
Yeah. Total scam. Yeah.
What happened to Martha Stewart?
Now, Martha Stewart was doing insider trading, where she had information about a company she owned stock in that wasn't available to the general public. Somebody had tipped her off that she needed to sell it. And so she sold her stock using insider information, and that's against the law. Now, she's okay. She's got a show with Snoop Dogg now on TV. Have you seen this? A cooking show with Snoop Dogg. It's actually pretty funny. My wife and I have watched it a little bit. It's kind of silly, but for some reason, I've always kind of liked Snoop Dogg. Yeah, he kills me. No, she's out. I think she was in for about 4 or 5 years, though. Yeah. No, she's got it. She's on TV. We're just talking about this cooking show with Snoop Dogg. She is old. She's an old white lady on a hip-hop cooking show with Snoop Dogg who brings his friends around that hit on her. Yeah, okay. All right, moving on. 5 basic concepts of democracy. How many concepts? 5. Oh, I said more than that. Supply and demand, run the marketplace, competition is good, Adam Smith, laissez-faire, hands-off, invisible hand of government. Right? Adam Smith, supply and demand, run the marketplace, maybe late next week. All right, 5 concepts, basic concept of democracy. Okay. New heading, big one, new big heading. Okay, we're outside different forms of government now. We're finally out of that. Okay. Now, obviously, since we live in a democratic system, Five basic concepts of democracy. Since we live in a democratic system, okay, not a democracy, right? But a democratic system, it's important to understand the concepts of democracy. All right? And number 1 is very simple: the fundamental worth of the individual. The fundamental worth of the individual. I think as Christians, you would all believe that. Right? And within this, everyone's dignity should be upheld. Okay? The dignity of their worth. Okay? Now let me ask you a tough question. You guys know most decisions in a democracy are made by the majority. Like half plus 1, right? 51%. You follow me? If most decisions are made by the majority in a democracy, is it okay to do this? Can the welfare of one person be subordinated for the interests of many?
No.
Yeah. So, is it okay to say, you know what, we're not going to worry about you because this is what's best for the most of us? Is it okay to subordinate one person for the benefit of others? And that's often a difficult question. Okay? Now, when you're talking about rights, okay, is it all right to take away your right if it benefits the rest of us?
Don't we already do that? Like with land, if you own property and then someone wants to...
You're talking about eminent domain.
No idea what that is.
That's what that's called. When the government takes private property for public use. Eminent domain. Okay. Yeah, we do. We do that. Now, we pay you for the land, right? The government pays you for the land. Do they do that for a sidewalk?
Yeah, behind.
Nice.
Oh, you get a ton of money.
I'd like a sidewalk.
Yeah, if they do a sidewalk in your house,
Like it.
Like no, no, because my grandma or my grandpa's grandma, they put like a sidewalk in front of her house and they made her pay for it.
well, it depends if it's on
Oh, jeez.
the border.
My brother got a sidewalk and they paid him for it. Well, it
Your grandmother got duped, man.
Sounds like your grandma's.
Unless she asked for the sidewalk and they said, well, you got to pay for it if you want it. I don't know. Okay. All right. So that is kind of a tough question that we have to fight over with the fundamental worth of the individual. And sometimes we do. Now, the second basic concept of democracy is the equality of all persons. The equality of all persons. Now, does this mean, like the Declaration of Independence says, all men are created equal? Or does this mean we're all equal in outcome?
We all have the same rights.
Okay, we all are given the same rights? Yes. Yeah, it's more the former than the latter, right? Because you guys know what equality of outcome means? Yeah, everybody ends up the same. Okay? Now, what we want in this country is that everybody can start here, at the starting line. So that some people aren't starting back here, and some people are starting up here, and some people are starting back here. We want it where everybody can start here. Where you wind up at the finish line, that would be communism if we all finished here, right? Yeah? That's equality of outcome. So if we're running a race in here, okay, I'm going to say Dustin, maybe Clayton's going to win that race. Okay, I'm going to come in in front of Chelsea. Okay?
Alright, boys.
Chelsea's going to be back here, okay? And I'm going to be here.
I see how it is. Still we're sleeping.
Or the finish line.
I'm very aggressive by that.
That's okay. We're allowed to do that. Okay, now, that's right. We have the right to offend each other.
You're calling me fat.
Hey, no, I am not.
I'm not calling you fat.
Okay.
No, my school teacher says you're
Now, in reality, does everybody get to start here? Not everybody's born in the same situation, right? And so we use free education to try and create a situation where people can get here to the same starting spot. Although, some people are born into wealthy families and so forth. It's different, okay? But as a society, we want to recognize their equality as a human being, okay? And so we give everybody the same equality under the law, okay? And that goes back, and I mentioned the 14th Amendment early on in here, okay? The 14th Amendment defines who a citizen is and says all citizens have equal protection under the law, okay? That's what it's talking about. It's not talking about the equality of outcome. But see, if you're not educated at all, people, and you say, well, we're all equal, that's very easy for somebody that's not intelligent to say, well, how come I don't have what they have? We're not equal. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And a lot of people fall for that. And it's sad. Okay? All right, number 3. And this is an important one. Majority rules, as we kind of already talked about, right? And minority rights. Majority rules and minority rights.
What kind of rights?
R-I-G-H-T-S. Now, just as we talked about, guys, equal protection on the law. Now, if you look back throughout human history, wherever there's a majority of people, whether it's based on race, religion, language, and so forth, oftentimes minorities are oppressed by the majority. Does that make sense? So we have to, in a democratic system, we have to make sure that minority rights are protected. Okay? They are protected in the Constitution. But as citizens, we have to make sure that happens. All right? If we don't, guess what? My white people, I think I'm talking to a room full of white people, okay? You and I will not always be the majority. Do you understand? So as white people, we do not secure the rights of the minority. When we become the minority, should we expect that our rights be protected?
Can you give us an example?
Yeah. I mean, discrimination. In hiring or discrimination in... You could use the example of like gay marriage. Okay? If the majority... that's kind of... I don't know if that could ever happen. But if the majority of people of this country became gay, okay, and straight people, we want them to be able to get married. What if they said, straight people, you can't get married anymore? Okay. That's not a really good example, okay? But you asked. But it's a situation where, no, I mean, you have to, hey, if you see discrimination and you see somebody being mistreated because of the color, skin, their religion, so forth, okay, then what should you do? You should stand up for that person. Okay? So, that's what I'm saying. Generally, we have those rights. And guys, it's taken us a long time. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 didn't happen until 1964.
Yeah.
All right? It took this country a long time to put some laws in place to make sure that we were protecting the rights of minorities. Women didn't get the right to vote until the 1920s. Okay? Well, what if they just decide to strip away white people's right to vote once we become the minority? Because majority rules. Are you following me? That's a good example. That's a better example. Okay. Now, is the majority always right?
No.
No. But it is the decision that is the most pleasing to the most people. Isn't it? Whether they're right or wrong, it's going to be the most pleasing to the most people. Because it's the majority decision. All right. The fourth basic concept of democracy is the necessity of compromise. The necessity of compromise. Now, are there some issues that are just not compromisable? That are just wrong and I'm not going to compromise on? Like what? Okay, we got abortion. What about slavery? Okay, well, what about human sex trafficking? That sort of thing. There's no compromise, right? Well, let's just say, if you could say to the Democratic Party, which tends to be more pro-choice, and say, look, we want a ban on all late-term abortions. If you give us a ban on all late-term abortions, we'll raise taxes on the wealthy 2%. We got a deal. Can we make a compromise there? Now, guys, the ultimate goal for most people that are strongly pro-life is to overturn Roe v. Wade, okay, and have a system where we have adoptions and so forth, where we, people that have pregnancies they don't want, that we can take care of that in a good way. But you're not. I mean, what if you could make incremental steps, like baby steps towards that goal, through compromises over time? Would you do that, or would you say, nope, it's all or nothing? Well, that or an overturn of the Supreme Court case in 1973, right? So, yeah, I mean, you got to take that compromise, right? We'll stick it to the rich a couple percent, but no late-term abortions. We're moving forward, okay? So, yeah, I mean, guys, and this is what's important about who your president is, who your leadership is in Congress, okay? President Obama and the Speaker of the House for a long time was John Boehner, okay, for most of Obama's presidency. And then you got Paul Ryan. They didn't work with each other. In fact, in a lot of cases, they didn't like each other, personally. Okay? So it's hard to work with somebody when you don't like them. But if you go back in American history, and I like to talk about Reagan, because Reagan had Democrats in charge of the Senate almost his entire presidency. I think his whole presidency. And so he had to work with the Democrats. And he had Democrats in the House, too. Tip O'Neill was the Speaker of this House, this good Irish Catholic Democrat I think he was from Chicago. Tip O'Neill, larger-than-life figure. Him and Reagan would bash each other in the media. Okay? But then they'd go out and have dinner and talk it out and work together and cut deals, compromise with each other. I'll give you this, you give me that. To me, this is really important. I need this. You give me that. Okay? Good presidents do that. Okay? Good leaders in Congress do that. But it's both their faults. It's not just Obama's fault. Okay? Because Mitch McConnell in the Senate, he did some bad things. I mean, just stupid things. I think I told you this. He said after Obama was elected, he went to the Senate floor. This is the leader of the United States Senate. And he said, my number one goal is to make Barack Obama a one-term president. Now, is that president going to want to work with you? No. So the blame goes around. Yeah.
Okay, so I always hear, though, from like a conservative radio host or something like that, they're like, oh man, those conservative or those Republicans, they outed the Democrats in this, or they wouldn't stamp their foot and say no or something.
Right,
like that.
right. And a lot of times they did. The Republicans caved. Is that what you're talking about? They said they caving to Obama and the Democrats. Yeah. And a lot of times I agree with that they are caving, that there was no compromise. So if we're going to, and here's a good example of that. If we're going to increase the debt ceiling, So we're going to allow the president and Congress to spend more money than we have. We have a ceiling. So when it was at 16 trillion, if we were going to go more in debt than 16 trillion, they had to raise the debt ceiling, right? So the Republicans control Congress. They're the ones who are going to have to raise the debt ceiling, right? Okay, well, let's say, all right, we'll raise the debt ceiling if you put a freeze on government spending, or you put a freeze on government hiring. If you cut, 2% or 1% from each department, so that we can balance this out. Okay, you got to get something for that. And if you're not getting anything for it, for raising the debt ceiling, what good are you doing? It's just being irresponsible and spending way more money than we have. Taking the country further and further into debt. Putting that on your children and your grandchildren that are going to have to pay for that. Because we're not going to retire this debt in our lifetime. It's irresponsible. And that's why talk radio hosts say that kind of crap. Because they're being irresponsible. And they're caving. They're making the easy decision. They're taking the easy path. No, if we're going to raise it, let's cut somewhere else. Let's balance this out. You following me? Does that make sense, Levi? Thank you. Yes.
How come the Senate wouldn't listen to President Obama's judges' nominations?
Oh, because they had an opportunity. I mean, it was close enough to the end of his presidency to say, you know what? We're going to wait until the next president. And most people thought that was going to be Hillary, obviously. But there was always a sliver of hope that you might get a Republican to appoint a replacement to Scalia, who was appointed by a Republican. And so that was a pretty bold move on McConnell's part, who headed up the Senate, to say, nah, we're going to wait. Supreme Court can do their job with 8 people for a few months, like 9 months. Okay, so and then it'll be really interesting to see what Trump does with his appointment there. But yeah, things are trudging along. And guys, if you pay attention to the news, you're seeing some of the things that Trump's doing in the first couple days here, and some of it, you might like, some of it you might not like, but pay attention to what he's doing. Okay?
Supposed to sign up on the wall thing.
Yeah, that's what.
We're going to see some movement on immigration. Definitely, we saw that from the Islamic countries yesterday, and then we'll see what happens, with folks that are here. I think you're going to start seeing deportations of criminal aliens, people that have broken the law here, especially violent ones. Now, the big one is sanctuary cities, and it's going to be interesting. You guys know what a sanctuary city is?
That's like the cities that where illegal immigrants come in and they're okay with it.
Yeah. So, but where?
Texas.
Texas, California.
Yeah, like San Francisco. Let me give you. Any guys heard of Kate Steinle? Okay, Kate Steinle lived in San Francisco, and this guy that was here illegally from Mexico had been deported 4 times. Had re-entered the country, committed crimes in this country, was arrested by the San Francisco Police Department. Okay? The federal government asked them to hold him until ICE, which is Immigration Customs Enforcement, could get there and deport him. They let him go. The city of San Francisco. They turned him loose. And he killed Kate Steinle. Shot her in the back. Now, this is what a sanctuary city does. It doesn't report people that break the law that they arrest, okay, to the federal government. Because it's the federal government's job to enforce immigration, not states, not local, okay? And sanctuary cities are not turning over criminal aliens. I'm not talking about people that are here illegally, so you get pulled over or you have an interaction with a cop and they ask you for your ID and you're here illegally. We're not saying that the cop's going to arrest you and turn you over to ICE. We're talking about people that get arrested for crimes. Violent crimes. Drug crimes. And you report that to the federal government, they come get them and they deport them. So that they're not a threat to the citizens of this country. So what Trump could do is say, listen, San Francisco, Austin, Texas, if you want money from the federal government, because the federal government gives states and local governments a lot of money now, we talked about that, you're not going to get any federal dollars if you don't turn over your criminal aliens to the government. If you remain a sanctuary city. If he does that, okay, it's kind of like Brownback. He says, we're not going to expand Medicaid. We're going to, that check for $31 million you're going to send the state of Kansas, we're going to send it back. Okay? It'll be interesting to see how he deals with these sanctuary cities. Okay?
I just saw something this morning that he's going to send in the Fed about something.
Oh, we talked about Chicago. I mean, if you look at the numbers of shootings in that, you know, he said, if you guys don't get it under control, I'm going to send in the feds. Okay? They did that. They talked about doing that during the Prohibition in Chicago with Al Capone, sending in the feds, you know. And they did. They sent in the FBI and the government. Now, sending in the National Guard, I don't know. They got to do something to clean that up. But I mean, it's a war zone. It's more dangerous in Chicago than it is in freaking Afghanistan. All right.
How did you know about Lady Kate Sack? Was it just like they on the news?
Yeah.
So she was just like a citizen?
Yeah.
Did he just shoot her? She was minding her own business and he just shot her?
Yeah, it might have been a robbery situation.
I thought it was a robbery.
Yeah.
They said Ventura was robbed too after.
That's awful.
I know.
That's so awful. Did you hear about that here locally a while back? There was a woman that had a heart attack in the drive-thru, maybe Taco Bell, and the person behind her got out of their car, and she was dead, stole a ring, and drove off. Yeah, they caught him. He went to jail for that. Okay. I hope they catch the person that did that in Dominican. Now their justice system is not.
Yeah, I heard it's pretty.
Yeah.
What it comes in there.
Oh, the pitcher from the Royals.
Oh, the guy that died in a car accident.
Yeah, Ventura. Okay, the last basic concept of democracy is individual freedom. Individual freedom. Now, do we have absolute freedom in this country?
No.
No. That would be what? Anarchy. Okay? So we go back to our social contract, right? Democracy demands some individual freedom within limits. Okay? We don't want to live in that complete state of nature. All right? And let me give you a couple quotes to just kind of elaborate on this. Okay? Oliver Wendell Holmes. You ever heard of him? He's a Supreme Court justice. Okay? He said this. He said, the right to swing my fist ends where your nose begins. I can swing my fist all I want, but I can't hit you in the nose. Right? Yes? John F. Kennedy said, the rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened. The rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened. Okay? Maybe. It might have been one of the lines. A proper balance between individual rights and the rights of society being safe is important. Okay? And so there's your 5 basic concepts of democracy. All right? Now, The next thing we're going to get into, and I won't go deep into this, and this deals with the reading for Monday, and that is the English tradition's impact on our government. So where we're kind of going here, and this is really where your essay starts.